Unusual. Don't know what's going on. Oh, there she goes. How's that, gang? Is that better? Hey, there we go. Thank you very much. Looking good, gang. Outstanding. So let's hope that's got it. Save. We still good? Yeah, well, thanks for pointing that out, Chip. Normally I get that thing all ready to go, so we're fired up here. So was it 2 weeks ago, I think I started a program on the Raptor 22 series, did a little illustration and design study on that. But about 2 to 3 weeks ago, I started a process on the Mokarron, which is a biomimicry problem that I looked at into on the hammerhead shark and converted it into some sort of a star citizen or a space citizen attack vehicle. So I'm going to go back and revisit that today, and then for what it's worth, go back to a little bit of review and show you where the progress is, and we can take it from there. So back about 3 weeks ago, as I said, I looked up this whole concept of getting a hammerhead shark and converting it into some sort of an attack vehicle, escort vehicle for a starship study. And interesting that they're kind of neat. So I started out with a series of pencil sketches, and I just picked a few out here to kind of give you a bit of a review, and I'm going to bring you up to speed as to where we are today. And it's interesting how the whole transition shifted. I kept looking at it and I kept developing it. Then I went back to the Raptor 22 last week before the holiday, and then went back and revisited this Mokarron series, and there's something about it, just didn't have enough guts to it. So we'll get to that in a few moments here, but this is where I started. Let me just kind of bring up the speed here. I started with an elevation, for example, the hammerhead area, looking at just a basic elevation study, and what really struck me was the fact that I want to keep it pretty organic, pretty fluid, and transfer as much as I can of the form into some sort of an attack vehicle interdiction study for interplanetary space. So again, cutting sections through it, front elevation, and looking at find a little contour study down below, and try to pick up that same body form down below here, and it worked out pretty good from the first go-around series of sketches 2 to 3 weeks ago. But let me just kind of switch gears here. So I went from that study, and then a little bit later on in the process, I went back into a plan view setup. And I think this is the one that gave me the clue here about shifting gears from where I was 3 weeks ago. I went back and revisited just a couple of days ago some of the early sketches, and there was something about this plan view that I went back in and looked at that was interesting. And let me go back to this one just for a moment here. What I picked up on this sketch was, in fact, this slope line was interesting. This slope line right here was a very interesting for me to work with. Point being there, that slope line was interesting because I wanted to pick up a high cockpit area, low platform, and then gunnery and munition systems on the outboard flanks. So this worked out pretty nicely. So that was what the slope line was there was good. So let's call that a day. And then I went back to the plan view side, but then when I looked at the plan view, I thought it was interesting. Along with that slope line we're talking about here, I think it'd be kind of nice to be able to look at something where you actually take that whole head system. If I turn this thing at 9 degrees like so, there was something about that much of that form that started to look pretty interesting in the plan view. Now, again, this is a little bit stiff, not quite really as elegant or as fluid as we wanted to as far as an attack vehicle is concerned. But something back and through. Now, this is a little bit, the fin system was interesting because that's exactly what that placement looks like on the actual shark itself. But maybe we combine that piece into like an exhaust or an engine system, and then back to a very tapered rear body on this thing. So, a cockpit area. So that was interesting. I went back and looked at that. I said, boy, I missed that completely. I didn't miss it, but I didn't see it as an absolute design approach until we looked at a few here of study sketches. So what you'll see next are a series of sketches built around that whole process of getting that slope line and elevation and that plan view study of the head itself and then the fin system as part of the engine nacelle series. So, but this is a start at it here, a little bit stubby, but looking at that same span and then getting something back into here, adding something to it to give it some engine thrust and so forth. So that's where we are there. So let's go back and I'll go through the history of this thing very quickly here to pick it up to speed here. So now the next series of sketches. Now notice I started to pick up that same hammerhead form here. Let's see if I can get this into place here. That hammerhead form, let's see, will that work all right about there maybe? Notice how that relationship here started to pick up on some of the sketches. A little more organic, a little bit more aggressive looking, and not as static as the actual body form itself on the shark. So this started to have some promise, and especially this view here with this high cockpit area, and this very low platform with the emission systems on the wings. Elevation said, it's okay, all right, a little bit work on that. But again, notice the girth in this guy. It's got a little bit guttier. Maybe we open this up a little, widen it out a little bit, give more substance to it. But ballpoint pen sketch to kind of give me some indication as to how that would play through. And then I went to the next step, where again, looked at front elevation, a little more compact area, for example, in the plan view here. And again, this one started taking on some real character. Not so much, for example, the front end capping. I just kind of close that off and kind of round that out, make it a little bit more specific. But I think something about this whole idea of this very diamond, almost inverted wedge, looking at it here, starting to make some really good progress in terms of making this biomimicry transfer work correctly. So we can see a relationship from the actual fish itself into the actual attack vehicle. So what do you think, Chip, so far? Are you still with me? Just making sense so far? Again, it's a very delicate balance because I didn't want to go too far away from the actual biomimicry piece, but at the same time get a little more of a substance to it to give it some real content. So there we are in the second pass of sketches here. So far, so very cool. So there's the next step. And I went to this family. Now notice, really tightening it up a little bit more. A lot of plan view sweep, bringing the wing surface in a little bit and getting a lot of engine thrust here. Again, going back to that whole idea of the plan view of the hammerhead, where you've got this very strong head form, body form tapered, and then the fin system to kind of give you the actual process that we're looking at here. And again, this is the munition system on the outboard part of the wings that would rotate. They would actually rotate at 45 degrees or a full 90, pardon me, 180 in an attack mode. So that was part of the rationale too, to give some sort of guts behind the actual process of putting the piece together. So that was another generation. And with a little bit of color. And again, notice it started to change some character. I thought it was kind of interesting how the actual overall shot, looking at this very girthy up front nose cone apparatus with some intake pieces underneath. High cockpit area. It wasn't quite high enough yet. That's a good start. But again, the plan view looked interesting. All of a sudden, the munition system, the wing surface, and these could actually articulate if we needed to. And again, that whole idea of having that body form and engine system not snuggled up against the body form itself up behind the head series. So that was the first pass of the color study here. And I went to this guy. Now the next step, interesting, again, a little guttier yet. I mean, look, getting a little more fanciful with this and really taking advantage of the cockpit being rivered. Munition system up front, a very, very organic front end on this thing, and getting a very almost a mechanical looking, very gutty looking, evil looking process, which is interesting. Notice this is where the engine nacelles were. Again, the fin system, the head system. Back to that plan view sketch that I went back and revisited just a couple of days ago, thinking, now we've got to get back to a little bit more a guttier approach to this thing. So another little sketch here. This now started to take on some characters, like a three-quarter perspective here in this thing. That thing is thick. What do you think? Thick meaning gutty? Yeah, got some meat on those bones. Yeah, I think it really helped to kind of put some substance to it, I think, Chip, because it didn't have the same. This is a little bit slim. Not quite happy there yet with the actual process of this body form. A little bit too gossamer here, but again, going back to something that's really chunky like this, really I think had a lot of character to it. I'm a heavy fighter. Yeah, you got it. That's a very heavy fighter with a little bit of hopefully nibble enough to get the job done. So this one is an interesting view. I thought what it helped me do was to see how high that cockpit could get for visibility purposes. And at the same time, keeping that platform low where the hammerhead process is, and then the munition systems on the outboard wings. And again, notice the engine nacelles kind of mocking that fin system on the actual fish itself, or the hammerhead. So that started it there. But then all of a sudden, from this sketch, started shift direction just a little bit here. And I used that format here, and I created this pencil study as a master. And you know, the more I looked at it, it was missing this kind of character to it. Let me just go reverse pages here. It was reversing this type of character, just needed more of what that's doing, maybe not so substantial, but it just looked a little, especially through here, a little bit thin, and some other areas too that just didn't have the same guts to it. So I thought maybe looking at this beauty one more time to give it some guts. I don't know if I'd go that far. It's a bit too evil looking, but again, moves a little bit away from the biomimicry process. Interesting concept, but I don't know if it has the same substance to it. Let me put this back here for a moment. But there we are with this guy. Oh, let me reverse these guys out here. So there we are. So I decided on that form that the more I looked at it, I thought, I was going to put this into a composition, which I did. I'll show you in a moment here. But it still didn't have that about it. That really kind of gets you like, wow, this thing looks really kind of fly at you and really be a real evil presence to work with. So from that, I went to that and I did a little color study here, going into a composition piece. So it went from that pencil study to this color study here. And I don't know if it's just me or I wasn't really content with the fact that we had it going here, was enough guts to it. I was going to do a three setup squadron setup here in the actual illustration itself, but it's still, even in color, if you look at the pencil sketch, it looked a little thin. Didn't have that same kind of guts to it at all. It's just interesting. Kind of move some things around a little bit. The engine nacelles are a little bit slimmer, a little bit beefier, so to speak, but had a little more section to it. But I just didn't really see that being a real imposing looking piece of equipment. So what I did, the color study, I don't know if you like the yellow squadron identifier as the head cap at all, but that was one of the features to work with, maybe a color break looking at, and that's why I did this color study. What do we want to do with this thing? Keeping it very mechanical looking through the body form itself, high canopy, cockpit, or maybe a two-man process. To put a blade up front, we've got a mean cheese. Yeah, it's slicer. Yeah, that's pretty cool. That could work out pretty good, Chip. A cheese slicer, excellent. But again, I think you agree. It just didn't have enough girth to it, and the statement being made, it wasn't really strong enough. And I think the scale was had to be a little bit more massive, and maybe reduce some of the overall slimness of the actual body form itself and get more guts and more girth in the body form itself. So that was a color study I did. So once I looked at that, I thought, you know what, maybe it's time to go back to something a little more of a presence. So let's do this. That's where we go with the color study. I'll keep that handy for a moment here. But again, this is what I moved into. Now this has, I think, a lot more character to it. Notice the girth. Let's put these side by side. Look how the girth changed. We can go side by side and get them to work here just a bit. Let's do this. Is that working all right? It's pretty close. This is where I was, and I think you notice it right up front. It just, this girth, changing the view a little bit and putting a little more mass in here, putting a shelf or a platform up on the canopy itself and getting a lot more guts into the actual engine systems themselves. So really more, less tampering in the nibble. Yeah, I think that's really interesting. You think that's the better approach, Chip, the one I just revisited? I think it is. It just looks much more substantial. I'm really not unhappy with the fact that all the elements remain the same. So that hammerhead formed it up front, a little bit of wraparound nose cone on this thing to give it some guts. But actually, the engine nacelles, higher cockpit, twin blade rear stabilizers, and then again the munition systems on here that still articulate and pivot. So I think we had a good run at it here. So let's do this. Now that I've got that, I'm going to go back in and revisit some of these sketches. I'm going to do some really quick little thumbnails. And I went from that study to this. All of a sudden, now that began to look like it had some guts to it, right? Chip, what do you think? Making sense? Gave me a bit of scale. Very interesting pant system for the landing gear. Maybe we add one in the rear if we have to, but again, the rear entry up into the cockpit itself. But that was part of what we started with. Let me get these out of the way, and we'll start doing some little thumbnail sketches here. Now, if I keep that in mind, let's go back here to get a land base down here. Let's just do a couple little thumbnail sketches here. If I go back and get that gesture down, it's more uphill. Then I come back in with this front end graphics to flatten it out. I come back in and drop this nose cone off into the ditch, up into this whole idea, this very high cockpit, and let's just change something here. If I went back and did this, get back out of this thing, into that strut or wing system, back into that actual fairing. Maybe just a bit more height in this thing in the cockpit, get this thing kind of slipping back a little bit. Dihedral. Tail system back here, I'm going to draft that in, bring this into a body form, so I'm going to get that engine nacelle to really kind of work at it here. Maybe not so much of that, but it's more of this. That munition system, they kind of sneak out there quite a bit, come back underneath to that intake process. That kind of got in a little bit. entry egress. Oh, what do you think? Oh, so there it is. Just again, a whole different gesture. Let's get this guy with the engine nacelles here. This is where the end of the engine nacelle is here. So we've got that coming back in. Let's cast a shadow off that guy. So it's floating off that body surface there. That separates that. That comes out a little bit. Now let's get this guy to kind of come in here. All right, there it is. There's one study. Again, just a little bit more platform on this thing. Let's see if we can get this kind of go round out a little bit here for us. Got pods laying in place here. That's got some interesting characters. I think it's a lot more guts to it than this guy here. I mean, this one really did not fill the bill at all. It just looked really gossamer. It's streamlined enough, but it didn't have that same guts to it. I mean, we're adding the girth on this thing and giving us a real body form, especially up and through here, through the cowl area. Really interesting, a lot more mass to it. What do you think, Chip? So far, so good. You buying this little variation on theme here? Let's do this and we give this guy some scale. It's a little bit more. That comes off of that. That comes off of that. Now let's give this guy some. I think that gives us a little more a sense of scale or scale. Yeah, we're good. Yeah, so far so good. I mean, it's I don't. This line does not exist. That's just a streamline coming through off the form itself. That wouldn't be a body break. But if you come back into this thing, now we can add a little bit of secondary chamfer line in through here. Off of that, come off the canopy, drop that in, entry egress there, and again, that actually can lift as well. So we've got this kind of thing going on too. No, I realize if you're coming underneath, you don't read that action, but yeah, sure, that would lift in case of emergency situation, and the body form itself can go back a lot more rounded, get a lot more that again, very fluid and round surface back there. So I think that's making some good progress. What happens here? Let's do this. Get this guy set up here. So if we go that route, and what happens if we start to look at this thing from what I looked at here from the point of view? There. Something like that. Either you're muted again or you want full master Yoda model. Yeah, it's still working all right sound-wise. I just went a little bit of a sketch job here. So what do you think? Does this kind of make some sense for us here? I think, Chip, I'm not sure if I'm really kind of balancing it a little bit. I want to make sure we get that. The real balance for me is basically this. And I think this is the thing. This is what really I'm really looking forward to. It's this guy here. If I come up that center line, I begin to develop a sweep here. I kind of come through and break it, and bring a sweep in through here, and connect those dots right there. That, to me, that's the critical part of this whole process. Now, when I come out of this, intake, into intake, into body break or wing break here, and bring this rearward, and bring this rearward. Maybe that's what we're after, a little tighter looking format here. Maybe it's this. And then here, the center line, bring this thing back. So we shot there. Came into this here, brought this back and then just tapered it like so. I don't want to get too long and too nasty with this thing. I just want to really streamline this thing. And put another filter in through here, kind of get more guts to it. That's not bad. If I do more direct here and more direct here, bring those two fueling systems in here. We have that. Then, I don't know, does that, no, we bring the nacelles off here. Now, this could be interesting. We actually kick this thing out. I don't know. What do you think? Quite a bit of balancing. Yeah, it is a balancing act. I'm not quite sure. I like that length. If I could shorten that up a little bit, much, much healthier, I think. Just something about this. Maybe we cut that back to about there. Canopy. And we had this. I don't know. It's just really, it's an odd proportion. I don't want to get too long with the thing, because if you can do that, it all of a sudden starts to look a little bit more distorted. So let's try something else here in a moment here. Rain for us here just for a moment. So there's another study and plan view here. Here, this. Let's see what these guys do. Let's go back to this guy for a minute. See, when I look about this elevation, it looks like real stubby. I mean, there's not a lot of real estate in there, and I think we're losing a little bit if it's too short. Yeah, it's got to be the right balance. I think that's really going to be the tough part, because I think the work for us here. Sure, because again, if you look at this revision study, I mean, there's a nice balance between that portion, 1 to 1 to 1, so forth. It's not equal all the way through. It just looks like a better balancing act here. So maybe if it's this, we come back in and just something else here. What do you think? Proportionally, does that look pretty interesting? Or is it just me? I don't know, it's a really tough project. You know, see what I do this here. Let's get this out here. Get that munition system to cantilever for us here. Got a wing on that guy. Recess in here. I don't know. What do you think there? Yeah, it's good. Cleaner design. Yeah, it's much cleaner. What do you think? Do you think that's healthier? Or should we bring this nacelle up again against the body? That's what's missing. Maybe lift that whole nacelle up. But I don't know. What do you think here, Chief? Big help here, Chip. I'm glad you're on board today. What do you think as far as overall concept goes? Does that look healthier to you? Yeah, nah, that's good like that. I think you like it like that with the nacelles low? That's interesting. Let's put a little bit of guts underneath this thing here now. Let me sharpen the stick a little bit here. Come in here underneath, get more body guts to it. Get that thing to kind of run through and pick up the engine. So now that's going to go negative. So let's get a lot of dark shadow in this thing and see what it does. I think proportionally it looks pretty good. What do you think, Chip? Proportion from front to middle cockpit to aft. Look much healthier? I think it does. It almost mirrors what we've got here, but with a little bit more. Let me move this up just a bit. Just a bit of a change. Proportions are good. Yeah, I think the proportions look really good. I think much, much better. I'm not sure if I like this lower location. Maybe we'll raise them up just a little bit so I get a little bit more height on that thing, but I think the character is there. No question. Much, much better. Big help, Chip. Thanks so much for tuning in here, man. Good to have you on board. Let's get this guy tuned in here. A little darker. And I can add a lot of detail and get the composition worked out for maybe next go around here. That goes there. And that goes underneath. Much better. A little relief here underneath that space. Get that little separation in here. Much healthier. That looks much better. Now, let's get this munition system all lined up here. Let's go by cantilever for this. Let me get some guts onto this thing. Let's do this. Come out like this. Again. Come out here. And bring that one out. Build it up. Rotation. Get that form to come off of this thing. There you go. I think that's got some, yeah, I think that's got some really good guts to it. I think that's a whole lot healthier. It's gonna stretch in some surface here. Finish that one out later. What do you think, Chip? There she is. That looks pretty good, doesn't it? I think scale-wise, that's starting to get some real interesting form to it here. So very interesting. So let's try something else. Well, we've got that. Okay, roll back in through here. We get that gesture right now. Elevation. What do you think? Still misses a cheese slice. Yeah, we gotta have that underneath. We put that underneath there. That'd be great. Let's see now. Let's see if we can get this thing to kind of run a little bit here. Where was I with this one sketch? Okay. A little bit of tone here. See that munition system in its elevation, but at least that'll give us some sort of a location as where the gun system actually sits in elevation. So it's about right in there, in there. Again, there we go. Well, what do you think? Otherwise, looking good. All right. What do you think scale-wise? That look pretty good to you? I mean, we've got a lot of lift in the rear end again in this thing. Let's see where we are here. That's where we started. Let's see if we can get these guys by comparison here. Let's see. That guy. Get all three of them or not quite? Nope, not really. A little bit lofty. The one I just finished up was this guy right here. I don't know. It looks pretty healthy. I think this, I don't know, you need your help here. It's a tall boy. Yeah, it is a big one. So again, wasn't enough girth in this thing. Like I said earlier, the sketches I did, that color study, or was it? Yeah, this just did not have we look at the difference between the character of this guy as opposed to the ones we're looking at here. I mean, there's no comparison. I think this is a little bit too thin, too gossamer. Color combination, what do you think, Chip? The yellows work, or you keep it all mechanical and military-like? Just need your input on that, if you don't mind. What do you think? I mean, it's really appreciate you taking the time to stay with it here. So I'm really betwixt between yellow works, but the gray is too light. Yeah, that's a good point. Much darker, much more the 7 or 8, 9, go much more evil with it. That's a good point, Chip. So it's something to keep in mind when I'm going to find an illustration of this guy. And I am going to go into this and notice in this sketch here, the layout I thought was interesting. I just didn't like this. I wasn't really a fan of the gossiperness of this whole process. Didn't look gutty enough. So I'm going to go 1, 2, the 3 combination squadron, and keep that intact when we go into the final here. But I think this one really has a character that I'm interested in, and I think a lot of it has to do with having the same character here. I think we can't lose. I don't think we lose either way. Let's see if I can put these together side by side. Yeah, there's an elevation, so it's pretty close. But there's something nice about getting guttier with this. And I think this has a little more width to it. I think I prefer this one. What do you think, Chip? This one over the one we just did, or not? What do you think? I can convert either way, but I'm really looking forward to wrapping this beauty up and getting a nice photo color, 11 by 17, and get up on the website for sale. So a difficult choice. Yeah, difficult choice it is. So we'll see what works out here. But I think as far as the actual change of pace from where we were here, there's no doubt much healthier looking machine. Far more gutty looking. I think it has all the characteristics that I started with. We're going to go back to my initial concept, if I can find that sketch here, where we were with these guys. Let me see if I can find this sketch. This final variation, I think, goes a lot more in line with what we're looking at. If I can find the second sketch. That whole process began to really tie in nicely with what we've done here. Again, we turn this sideways and look at that, just look at that plan view, for example, the hammerhead itself, the body form, engine nacelles, it just fell into place nicely. I didn't want to be so stiff. I wanted to be a little rounder with it, so it's a more aerodynamic, maybe too variant, heavy and light. But yeah, heavy and light, that's a good idea too. Heavy and light fighter. So, but I'm really pleased that we took a chance to, took the time rather, to come back and revisit this thing, because it was coming along pretty nicely, but I think just the whole concept of not being gutty enough, not really mimicking some of the hammerhead Mokarron characteristics to it was missing. So I think with that thought in mind here, you're going to call this a wrap and really look at getting into a nice composition piece with this variation of this guy and a variation of, I lost it again, where was it? Yeah, here. Variation of 2, and kind of work out some sort of composition where we actually tilt this guy and get some really interesting process here in terms of composition. But much happier all the way around. And I started that process 3 weeks ago, looking at elevations, looking at all the thumbnail sketches. You saw some of the earlier studies in the ballpoint pen studies, a little bit of color added. But I think this one really makes a lot of sense in terms of finally arriving at something that's got some real guts to it. And it looks like it's an attack vehicle, has some substance to it. It's got a high canopy system, low profile ammunition system up front, and I think good progress made, Chip. So a lot more, shall we say, substance to it, or it has some real character. That's what I was looking for. Something that had some real character, and when you put it into color, I think it'll make a neat deal. But I think the idea of color is interesting. Yellow works. The yellows are good. I think you're right. They'll go to a darker mechanical gray, and maybe go to some really highlight areas where we need it to touch base. So let me just do this, gang. We'll call it a wrap. Get these guys photographed, and I'll start doing some little process work maybe for next week. Pardon me. I don't know if I'm going to go finalize this thing next week or not. Evil, don't do light colors. Absolutely correct, Chip. I might not get to, I'm going to change venue for next week to maybe do a little landscape work or some product design or transportation pieces. Hey, good deal. Hey, thanks for joining in, Chip. Much appreciated. It's good to have you back on board, and take care of yourself, and hopefully tune in when you can. Looking good. Thanks again, Chip. Take care. All the best. And for the rest of it, looking at this same process today, I think we made some real progress in terms of getting some substance back into the form itself. For the Mokarron, I'm going to carry on to get a good final rendering of this thing to get put together. Maybe next week. Maybe we'll see how the process goes when I get a good composition put together. But again, if you have a moment, please take a moment and visit my website at at drcontrast.com rather. You'll see some interesting drawing materials. We're adding a new store to it, so hope you'll enjoy that. Some apparel work for some automotive material and some print work. We're adding some of this stuff to it as well as we go. Also, please drop me a note at jim@drcontrast.com if I can be of any assistance to you in putting together some sketch work or drawing work or teaching work. I'd be happy to do that. On that note, too, I want to really make a point. Here in the next few weeks, I'm going to start going back into some basic teaching, 5-minute clips of basic perspective studies, light source, a little odds and ends to get up on the YouTube to get more service into some of the actual work in terms of some not formal teaching, but just really quick, maybe 10-minute studies on processing. So hopefully it'll help you out a little bit. But nonetheless, I really appreciate you taking the time here today, gang. And again, visit my website, drcontrast.com. Drop me a note at jim@drcontrast.com, and I'd be happy to help you any way I can. And with all that being said, I just want to close with this. And always end this program or stream with this process, because I think it's so important to discuss it and to bring it forward for you, the viewer. Never forget to dare to remember, to dare to be great, because it really is interesting. You guys are terrific to work with. Thank you for the audience and your time and patience. It's been really great to work with you. And I can't thank you enough for coming in and giving me feedback on some of the programs I'm doing here. It makes a huge difference. So thanks very much, gang. All the very best. And dare to be great, because you are. Thanks so much. We'll see you next Wednesday, same time. Bye-bye now.